Hi, welcome to Epiphany number 23, Under Promise and Over Deliver. You can find this on Knowledge Base 52.23. And this is one that's relatively simple, but is not always easy to do. And it might also seem somewhat obvious, over promise or under promise and over deliver. But I've found even myself falling in a trap of actually at the heat of the moment when you're talking with a client or a prospect in over promising because we're eager to please. We want to gain the business or gain the trust or get the next step in the process. So we kind of over promise. I don't think we do it on purpose, but sometimes I know I've caught myself doing that. So I've worked really hard to not do that. So let's look at some of the things that Tom Peters said about it. He's the one that coined the term. Quality is important to be sure. So is absolute response time and price. But the top of most lists by far is keeping your word. And some other ideas here is promise PM, deliver AM. That's a nice little phrase. And the other one that I think that I want to cover here is we all seek predictability. Part of what we're talking about here when we're saying under promise, over deliver is to be predictable. And maybe not in every product, but I know that in financial services or probably in most service businesses, it's the small things that make the key difference between one person in a service business, between one service provider and another. And that's oftentimes the intangibles. It's not that, anyone can offer American funds, anyone can do Jackson. And even if they do a different, anyone has, or everyone has average to above average mutual funds in some form. So it's going to usually be, I mean, how many times have you uh, picked one person over the another just because you like them better or because they're reliable, because when you send them an email, they reply back in a timely manner? Think those intangible things. And you've got to remember that. Always put yourself in the client's shoes and say, what am I looking for? Obviously, there's a big extreme. This product is so much better at a much better price than this one. Yes, but I can tell you when you're comparing yourself to other advisors, the difference is unless they're a complete goof or they're a super incredible professional, except for the extreme cases, most of them are all in the center. So you've got to differentiate yourself between the small things, and these are the things that they want. Now, the good thing and the bad thing about our business is that we are in a service business. There is no physical product. We don't ship anything to people. There's also not a lot of variables involved. It's not like getting a mortgage or buying a home. The mutual fund is the mutual fund is the mutual fund. I mean, beyond selecting which fund or funds and putting the plan together, there's not a lot of things that you need to do afterwards. There's not a lot of interaction you have with five other vendors. And you've got to get this bit of information, that bit of information, put it together, and then deliver it to them. That's good and bad. The good is it's less work. There's not a lot of chances to screw things up. The bad is that there's not a lot of opportunities to demonstrate that you are different and better. I can tell you when you hear under promise and over deliver, one of the areas where you can really do that the most is when you do need to get some information for them or get feedback or give feedback, like usually like an email or a phone call, and you do that in a timely manner. That's probably the biggest area where you can do that. And that is so, and here's how I would do it. So for example, let's say it's a Wednesday and you're meeting with a client or talking with a client and they say, I need some information from my tax person about qualifying if I'm going to qualify for the Roth this year or not. And you need to find out what the limits are. I mean, that might be easy. You can do it on the phone right there in front of them, but you get the idea. Something like that where you need to go research something. Maybe they need to check on the account. Like, is my draft 175 or 195? I can't remember right now, and you can't look it up at the moment. Whatever, something like that. What I would recommend you do is purposely extend the time that you're going to promise you're going to deliver that back to them. So you might say, today's Wednesday, it's Wednesday afternoon. I'm a little bit swamped this week. I'll get back to you at the latest on Monday. I promise you. Okay. So that's what, instead of saying it's Wednesday, instead of saying Thursday or Friday, you say something like Monday. I mean, if it's Monday right now, I wouldn't wait till next Monday for something like that. But I'd at least give yourself 2 days. I wouldn't say tomorrow. I wouldn't say later today. I would say, let's say Wednesday, for example, if it's a Monday. That's step one. So you extend it, right? I mean, don't say 2 weeks. You got to use your common sense. You can't make it seem like something that's just checking on some info that it's going to be that long. The second thing I would do, where I think a lot of advisors make a mistake in general in this business, is you have to notate, you have to make a reminder. Now use whatever reminder system you want. I'm not going to get into a whole reminder training here, but I strongly recommend that you consider using the Google Calendar reminder system and or using the Google Assistant reminder system if you have an Android. It actually works on iOS too, and they actually work together. And you can go, let me look, you can go up, write it down over here, knowledge base 5.7.3. I'm telling you, it's one of the best single things you can do in your business, period, and put everything in there. I can't tell you how many times a day I tell my phone, hey, Google, remind me in 30 minutes to check on the Johnson's Roth IRA eligibility. I can't tell you how often I do that. And the great thing is that if you do it through the Google system, like on your phone, Google Assistant, it shows up on your calendar, or you can do it directly in the calendar and set it up as a reminder. And then, of course, you have to follow up with it and be someone that checks your calendar multiple times a day for those reminders. So that's step two. And then step three is literally then doing that, but doing it sooner. So if you promised Wednesday and it's Monday, or it's on Wednesday and you promise it the following Monday, is do it early. Now, if you promised Wednesday and it's Monday and it's 4 o'clock and you get off the phone, you set the reminder for an hour later or whatever it is, I actually wouldn't do it that night. I would maybe do it the next day. It's still early. You're still it's still over delivering because you promised Wednesday, now it's Tuesday. But there's something, if you do it too quickly, or which similarly, if give all your clients your personal cell phone number and you tell them call you 24/7, call me on a Sunday at 5 o'clock, that does not speak to being a professional. You might think that that's awesome, like you're available for your clients 24/7, but that's not what a professional does. That doctors don't do that. Your accountant doesn't do that. Your loan officer at the bank doesn't do that. Um, and when you're a little bit too eager, if you're a little bit too quick, it seems like you're an amateur. You're good, you're solid, and it's awesome that you got super feedback. So you've met the criteria of under promise and over deliver. But the downside is it's like the new guy in the business that the whole week is open, right? You can set an appointment anytime you want. The week is wide open. So there's part of where you have to demonstrate, like those of you that read Nick Murray, can you imagine Nick Murray being available on Sunday at 5 o'clock for a client? No. So you got to find that fine balance between the two. So when you hear this over promise I keep saying that under promise over deliver, be careful you don't over deliver to the point where you come off almost too eager and you have nothing else going on. That's why I tell people, if it's a Wednesday, hey, I'm really booked. I promise I'll get back to you by Monday. I don't say on Monday, because then in a weird way, I'm like promising Monday, but I'm not living up to it, even though it's soon. I say by Monday, or if it's Monday, if it's Tuesday, I might say by Friday. Okay. And then I'll do it a day early. And often, if I'm with them live, I'll actually have them watch me do it on my phone. I'll even say it in the phone, or there's a shortcut through your Google Calendar where you can just with a click, you can create a reminder and type it. And I would have them see me now they can't see when I schedule the time, but I would say, okay, hold on, I'll make a reminder right now. And I kind of mumble to myself, okay, Bubba, I will, check on Roth for the Johnsons. Okay. And then, like I said, the ultimate key is then that you do it earlier than what you promised. Just don't go super, super early, right? Again, if you promised for Friday and it's Wednesday, don't do it Wednesday night. Do it Thursday in the morning. One of the cool little side notes too, tricks you can use. The new, as of this recording, which is June 2019, our Gmail, Parsonix Gmail, has a snooze function, which is amazing. So what I would do, I probably would do it that night. Get it off my plate, right? So when I get off the phone, or if I get home from the appointment, however I met them, the reminder pops up. I would go do the research if I can do it after hours. I would do the research, find the answer form, compose the email, but then I wouldn't send the email 8 o'clock at night because again, it's back to what I said earlier. I don't want them thinking I'm too eager. I don't want them thinking, geez, this guy is it's cool that he's responding quickly and responding tonight, but he's really going to, he doesn't have enough going on, or that he's got to do his business at 8 o'clock at night when family time. So what I would do, I would compose it that night, but then I'd set the snooze to send the email, or is it called? It's not snooze. Sorry, it's not snooze. It's called send later. So I would do the send later to maybe 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's off my plate. I'm done, and it gets there. Basically, it's like during business hours. Obviously, if there's emergencies, client calls you, hey, I'm meeting my accountant at 7 in the morning. Can you get this for me? That's a different story. But they know it's an exception. So those are some of the tips I would use for under promise, over deliver. There's other areas you can probably use it in. Make sure you never over promise from a product standpoint, like performance. In fact, one of the things that I was happening to be talking to Patty today is when I'm quoting positive things about my product or my business. Let's say, for example, a long-term rate of return for a mutual fund. I always round it down. I don't round it up. Like if the ICA did 12.2% in a given time frame that I'm discussing with the client, I'll just say 12. I won't go to 11, but I mean I'll just say 12. Okay, or even if, let's say, you're discussing the cost and the client's investing 110,000 into an A-share mutual fund, and the sales charge is like 3,650 bucks. I don't know if that's the number, but let's say it's 3,650. And they're having a discussion with, hey, really, it's going to cost me 3,650. When I'm feeding it back to and I'm discussing it, the number I'm going to use, I'm going to say 3,600, not 3,560 or 3,550. I'm going to round it up, which is a negative to me in a way, right? You think, wow, I'm making it more than it really is. No, they know it's 3,560 or 3,550. But by rounding it up, they can't accuse me of trying to downplay it. So I do the opposite of what might be your knee-jerk reaction intention, which is to minimize it by rounding it down. That's a form of under promise, over deliver. Makes sense, right? So instead of 12.2, it's 12%. Or even if I'm competing with someone else. Let's say I'm competing with someone and another mutual fund, right? Let's say it's a mutual fund, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say it's another mutual fund you're competing with. You could be competing with from a pricing structure. Maybe you're competing with fee-based, or maybe you're competing with another variable annuity, or competing with a completely different product with a pricing structure, or maybe you're comparing rates of return. So the ICA that you're promoting to 12.2. Or let's say the annual expense. The annual expense is for the ICA is 5.7, right? And let's say you're competing with an index fund. Let's say the index fund is 1.6, just hypothetically, right? So when I'm feeding this back, I might put the index fund at 1.5. I might just say 1.5, and then on the ICA I might say 0.6. Not when I'm looking at the paper and I'm showing the number. I'll read it correctly, right? But I'm in conversation. I say, listen, so you're comparing 0.6 to 1.5. Here's what I'm doing is, instead of downplaying the competitor, I'm actually giving them a little bit of benefit by making the fee less, slightly, super slightly, but nonetheless less. I'm rounding it down. And the cost on my end, I'm rounding it up, right? I'm making mine a little bit worse and theirs a little better, because at the end of the day, when they discuss it amongst themselves, they're going to use the real numbers, and they're going to remember that I didn't try to exaggerate in the direction that favored me. Okay. So I'm going to round it in a way that's all part of kind of under promising. And then when they actually see the numbers, for example, the wife might say, when you left to the husband, yeah, these fees, I got this was 0.5 and, sorry, 0.15 versus 0.6. And the husband's like, well, no, I remember it's actually not 0.6. It's like 0.5 something, 0.57. And it's really, the index is not just 0.5, it's 0.6. You get my point? And the same with costs and expenses. Those are all forms of under promising, over delivering, which is the opposite of what many salespeople do. They try to they exaggerate their stuff to the benefit side, and they kind of under exaggerate, so to speak, the competitor to the more negative side. You want to do the opposite of that. Not to an extreme, but and by the way, if there's a round number, if the ICA was in fact exactly 0.6, it's not, it's 0.57, and the index was 0.1, I wouldn't change that, because I think it sounds silly. I would just leave it 1 and 6. But if there's an opportunity for rounding, I'll round it down. I'll round it towards the negative side for me, and the positive side towards the competition, just slightly. That way they start realizing that I'm not the kind of person who's always exaggerating, because people pick up on that. I know people in our very business that whenever they're talking about things, whether it's production or how big their fish was that they caught, they're always rounding up a little bit. And when I find that, it's really not, they didn't really make 10,000 this month, they made 9,750. You get my idea? And then you start doubting every other thing they say. It's like, slightly exaggerate, right? The bigger fish kind of story. So that's another form of using or applying this principle. But again, in summary, the most of the way that we use this from a client perspective, probably more than 50% of the time, is usually when you're promising to get back to them about something. I mean, one more comment. I'm a big believer in the newsletters, the monthly newsletters, but whether you do monthly newsletters, whether you do quarterly, whether you do semi-annually, or any kind of form of communication, going back to one of this fourth bullet point here on this screen, predictability. It's part of it. Is one of the reasons why you want to do some kind of outreach like a newsletter. And whatever you do, you want to do it consistently on whatever your time. If it's quarterly, do it quarterly, every 12 weeks. If it's monthly, do it monthly. If for no other reason than to be predictable and to be consistent. You know, and I know, a vast majority of your clients are never going to read the newsletters. They're not going to read the content. They're not going to click on the links that you have. They're not going to read the newsletter itself. That's not why you send it. You send it so that they know you're alive, you're still in the business, you're available. Every month it comes in. That's why you try to do it the same day of the month. That's why all shout out to Jessica Lankus for the kid. I submitted the day that Nick Murray sends the newsletter to us. I submit it to Parsons to get approved. And Jessica knows they get it done in a day, in 2 days. Even like if I send it Friday night, usually it's approved by Monday afternoon because I've had a talk with her years ago because she knows they want to be in a schedule. So I don't dilly dally. I don't 1 month sent on the 3rd, 1 month it's sent on the 15th. It's because I want that consistent. It's all part of this. I want that consistency to the client, knowing they don't read the damn thing, but they need to see an email come in from Michael Thomas that, it's this Nick Murray thing, and they see Nick Murray, Nick Murray, Nick Murray, and then inside I have the content that goes to the publicly approved stuff from American funds. I'm not sending you a copy of my email, my newsletter, but you guys see it too. I presume that you open it at least and look in it because I want that same predictability. American funds, Nick Murray, American funds, knowing they don't read the content. But it's all about the same message, the same promotion, if you will, the Nick Murray behavioral stuff, the American funds over and over and over again. And those of you that do newsletters, haven't you noticed that usually or often when your client has a question, they end up responding to your newsletter, right? Which has nothing to do with the newsletter. It's just their trigger. Oh, that's right. I meant to ask Michael about a 529 plan. I meant to ask him if he does, life insurance, right? And what they do, they're just like everybody else. They think of it, but then they don't make a reminder. So they keep forgetting to ask you. But then when the newsletter comes in, they respond to it. Oh, that's right. I was going to ask him about the life insurance. So they hit reply. That just happened to me literally yesterday as of this writing and the newsletter I sent, last week. So that's all part of kind of this under promise, over deliver. Is the consistency of the things that you're doing with your client. It's more about the consistency and getting back sooner than you promised, not over promising things on the product side, not over promising things in performance, not over promising on cost, not over promising what the market does. It's what it does. It starts building trust. It's like, you know what? Every time I talk to him or he gives me some information, it's always either exactly accurate or it's even less in his favor. And that's all becomes a pattern. Just like, someone that always kind of fibs a little bit or they're always late, right? Someone that's always late every time or over 50% of the time they're late. And every individual instance when they're late is a valid excuse. But when you look at their behavior over time, it's like percentage wise, statistically, they're more late than like the average person. But any individual time they're late, there's a valid excuse, right? They're probably not like lying to you, but what it is just they just have a habit of doing that. It's like that. It's like anytime you anyway, I don't want to get into it too long, take too much, go off topic, but it's all kind of part of that. But you just have this natural instinct about someone, right? If I said, um, I'm going to give you a list. I'm going to rapid fire 10 names to you of your friends and family and associates and acquaintances that you know, and I want you to answer knee jerk quickly. The question that I'm asking you for all 10 is, if you set up a lunch date with them or a phone call with them, are they going to, and they need to call you or you need to meet them at a Starbucks? If you had to put money down, are they going to be early, on time exactly? Like let's call that within like 2 minutes plus minus, or they're going to be late, which is, I would say, 5 minutes later than the time, right? On average. If you had to put money down statistically, and I'm going to give you the names, and you can't think about it, you get a knee-jerk reaction. And then boom, I give you, let's say I know a list of your friends and acquaintances and family, and I say, John Smith, you know, Lisa Thompson, and I go, and you had to rapid fire. Like, you can't think about it, you can't really analyze it heuristically. You've got to actually just knee-jerk it, right? Gut feeling. You're going to have an answer for those 10 people. You don't even know that you have an answer, but you do. Oh, George, no. Yes, him. Yes, no, Sally. And that's the way your clients think about you. And so the more often that you can under promise, over deliver, the more positive that they don't even know. It's not like they're recording it in a spreadsheet. It's just a natural thing that you get to learn about a person after you know them for a while, right? This person always responds to my emails, at least during business hours. They get back to me. They say 2 days, but they get back to me in one day. All those type of things. You're trying to build that confidence, and people will do business with you, and people will stay with you. Your clients will stay with you for those reasons that have nothing to do with the performance of the product, as long as it's performing within reason. I promise you. So there you have it. Over promise and under deliver.